All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for today's IL Social Studies Com about how to get your students to remember the social science they read. As you can see on the welcome screen or in the chat window, we have a pre-survey that if you haven't had a chance to take, the pre-survey is only 4 short questions. So if you want to take a moment and just kind of do that, we would greatly appreciate it. It helps us measure our impact so that we can keep offering these. My name is Katie Elvidge. I'm the social science content specialist for the state, and we're joined by Kathi Rhodus. Want to wave, Kathi? Hello. Okay, who's the ELA and social science content specialist, who's going to be our guest speaker today, talking about, excuse me, talking about ways and strategies we can help our students remember what they read in social science. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Kathi, so you can pull your slides up if you'd like.
Okay.
Excuse me that I have a little cough today. I may be muting myself since I know I'll have some background noise while Kathy's talking.
Okay, can you see?
Yes. Good.
Does it look very purpley?
Yes.
All righty. Okay, we'll get started. I'm a little scared that my screen might freeze from time to time, but if so, Katie can take over. I don't know why it's been freezing today, except for it's freezing outside, so maybe that's it. I don't know. But the topic is one that I think everybody that teaches any content area would love to learn more about, is getting students to remember the social science they read. And I should put in parentheses and get them to read it.
Kathi, I hate to interrupt you, but when you switched to your screen, your screen got really small on mine, and I can't see anything except for a tiny thumbnail.
Caitlin, can you see it?
Yeah, I could see the purple.
I can see it. It's just small. Maybe it's something.
Carrie, try up in the upper right-hand corner. I think there's like a gallery view, or there's ways to view.
I know, it's very strange. Okay, I'll keep playing with it. Go ahead. Sorry, I'll keep playing with it.
Okay, no worries. Okay. Before we get to some strategies, in social science, there are a number of different literacy strategies that we can talk about today, and we know reading is an important part of all content areas, but we're going to be talking a little bit about disciplinary literacy today and how that's different than the ones that you see in the other part of the pyramid here. So this is from Shanahan and Shanahan from the University of Illinois, and disciplinary literacy is those literacy skills that are specialized to social science, or to science, or to math, or to literature. And that's our priority that we're going to talk about today when we talk about helping kids remember what they read in social science, because we kind of have to get them to know a little bit about how social science is written and how that differs. A lot of times what we hear is about the intermediate literacy. And sometimes those strategies are what's adopted in a district, such as ways of taking notes or summaries or things that it can apply to all content areas. But we're not going to talk about those today. We're going to really be talking about ones that are specialized to social science. And this question gets talked about a lot. Whose job is it to teach those? English teachers were never prepared to teach the reading of history and social science. The history and social science teachers know about their discipline, but they too may not be aware of the reading and writing demands of their discipline. So while it's not the English teacher's job to teach kids how to read science or social science, because they were never trained, but also depending on where our teachers graduated from, they may not feel comfortable with getting kids to read and understand the social studies that is in front of them. So it's their job, but then again, they probably need some strategies and assistance in that area. So they may not have been prepared to, but that is something that is a great opportunity to start sharing with our teachers is it may come easy to you, but it doesn't necessarily come easy to your kids. So why are social science texts difficult for kids? And it could be any of these different reasons. A lot of times it could be the length of something. If kids look and they see, many times you make an assignment and they're counting how many pages they have to read. And that in itself is a natural human response. Because if you put something in front of me, like my insurance papers that I don't necessarily love to read, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to read all this. So that's to be expected. So we're going to talk about some strategies for that as well. We also know, and vocabulary is not our focus today, but it is a focus that we have some resources for that we'll be placing on our website in the not too distant future. We hope we're not still working with kids on decoding skills. Hopefully that has been taken care of as well. And many of them lack comprehension strategies. They don't know how to get through something that's tough for them, or if they don't understand something, many of them just give up and don't persevere. And a lot of them just are not interested in the content, and they maybe not have enough background knowledge for it to make sense. So there's all sorts of different reasons why text can be difficult for students, not only to read, but especially to remember. So disciplinary literacy in social science is consisting of all things literacy, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, that allows students to learn and engage with the content that they're reading. And many times it's also referred to as historical thinking skills. But how do we get them to actually read and understand the social science we assign? It requires more than just assigning. Look at what it takes to read like a historian. This slide makes me realize how much of a job it is and how much it needs to be shared among all the teachers that teach social science to kids. Because we have a number of different sources. We have primary and secondary. We want them to analyze point of view and perspective, identify where there's bias, think sequentially, be able to compare and contrast events and all the different sources that they may be encountering, and determine what words mean within context. So our historians write the material that requires our kids to think like this. There is a specific document, and I will say that you really need, in order to look at the entire document from the International Literacy Association, you would need if you go onto literacyworldwide.org, how you can actually get this article. I can't post it for you. But it's written by Cynthia Shanahan, and she heads the history design team of Project READ, and heads the development of the Literacy Ready curriculum. And she put in some, she deals with not just social science. We've extracted some of the things for social science, but she also deals with science, math, and ELA for literature teachers as well. So looking through our article, she says there's some things you need to consider as teachers.
Hey,
First
Kathy,
of all, yes.
I pasted the link to that article in the chat window in case anybody wants to peek at it while you're talking. But we'll put the presentation has a clickable link in Google Drive for you later too, for you to look through some resources. Sorry to interrupt you, Kathy.
They may not be able to get right on it without having an account. So
gotcha. I misunderstood that. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, looking at texts and then taking the disciplinary practices that is expected when helping kids read and take out information. They need to be taught some of these practices. So the first thing we're going to start with is texts and reading different formats of text, and a little bit of strategy on how to get them through some longer texts. So as we can see on this slide, and this isn't everything, history comprises multiple perspective and interpretations of a wide variety of formats. When we look at just the few on here, kids may not be used to looking at anything but the last one listed, which is textbooks. And we know that a history textbook should not be the only text that they're exposed to when they're learning about a specific topic. Mainly because someone had to write that too, and they're not always free from bias. Many times it could be a one-person point of view, and it depends on the company and all sorts of factors. So when you look at the things that I have bracketed to the side, there are a lot of things besides just books or text or articles to consider. Political cartoons, photographs, paintings, other artifacts, tables, charts, graphs, maps, memoirs, songs, audio and video recordings. All of that just makes social science come alive in the classroom. So pairing that with your history textbook or a primary source allows for deeper meaning many times and for a little bit more engagement. So because sources is such a huge thing listed, I wanted to throw in a couple slides of where our social science standards are really requiring kids to look at more than one source at a time. This is 6th through 8th grade, and by the way, kindergarten through 5th have some highlighted as well. I just don't have them in this presentation. I'll show you where you can see that in a resource in just a second. But I bolded where it talks about credible sources or the different sources that students need to be looking at. You can't look at multiple points of view if you're just looking at one textbook. 9th through 12th have a number of different standards that are highlighting looking at more than one source at a time. And the 5th bullet point down even lists some specific things in it as well as data sets on the next one, and so on and so forth. So having kids look at a wide variety of sources is part of our standards. And but many times they are ignored, or teachers are assuming someone else taught kids how to examine or read these visuals. So many times kids just skip over all these in the resources that they're learning about unless we stop and pay attention to the details that can be found in all of them. We have a great resource, and I'm just going to take you to it real quick. It's an analyzing social science documents. It's just tips and graphic organizers to help them read all of these visuals plus more. So if I click on this link on this particular slide, oh no, it's doing that contacting the server for information business. Katie, do you want to pull these documents up on yours, and I'll switch it to you unless it's coming.
It might be. I did put it in the chat window too. Let me see if mine opens any faster. Oh, I clicked the wrong link. Hang on.
Let me stop share and you can take it into it.
Yeah, but my link didn't go nicely.
Well, hang on. I can do it. Hello, Kathy. The social science website, ilsocialscienceinaction.org, has a ton of resources. These that I pulled up immediately under resources at the top I've clicked specifically on Illinois resources. These are the things that have been created just for Illinois because we have Illinois specific standards. So as I'm scrolling down here, we have all that great inquiry kit and all those great resources. These are the analyzing social science sources. So if I click on the 6th through 12th grade one, okay, you can see, first of all, each of the documents starts off with the standards that address sources. And then we have, this is a written document. This gives teacher tips, questions for analyzing them, the strengths and limitations of that source, and then graphic organizers to use in the classroom. And then here's the next thing, posters. If they're analyzing war posters, maybe. Here are teacher tips, questions, strengths, and limitations. Also some great resources at the bottom to take them to. And then graphic organizers that they can use. Here's objects, oral histories, and some great resources to get oral histories. All right, more here, more here. I'm almost going too fast. We're getting dizzy. Maps. Many times teachers assume someone else has taught kids how to read maps and the different kind of maps that there are out there. So take a look at some of these tips, and then all these things do here is ask enough questions that get kids to examine, maybe work in small groups the first few times they use a graphic organizer when looking at maps. They'll learn from each other, they'll all work together, and then eventually be able to use many of these on their own. And then finally, our ultimate goal is you can just start doing this independently. But these are just tools for the classrooms that will help them. I think political and editorial cartoons are some of the most complex analytical thinking students can do, and they're tough. And so this gives some tips, a lot of resources where you can get some free political cartoons. But once again, how do you analyze it? What are the details you need to look at? And then you'll see all these graphic organizers. Near the end of them, that's where they're doing that deeper thinking. They're taking all of the basic knowledge from the top, and then as they're going through that, they'll be able to think a little bit deeper about the topic. So this is a pretty big booklet if you printed it all out, but at the back, we also have a couple of lessons that we took from, this one's from Library of Congress, and what we did is we showed the alignment to our standards. That's the big difference in this one. Other than that, it's straight from Library of Congress, and it talks about all the different sources that you're to use during this lesson. So if you work in a district that deals with kindergarten through 12th grade, we have a big booklet for each of those grades, and that really helps them with sources. Okay. All right. Now for textbooks. It's time to talk a little bit about their use in the classroom and the fact that it is perfectly fine to get kids to read those textbooks. But I think if we asked many students if they can find a way to avoid reading it, like I avoid my insurance paper reading, they're going to try to. But we want kids to be doing more reading of social science. The only way to become a better reader is actually to read it. And if they avoid doing it, then they're not really working towards comprehension. So Cynthia Hines says that most textbooks don't necessarily require critical thinking. It's more of a narrative of a specific author or a historian. And They're not usually taught to question or think about content critically. It's really just to give you basic information, which that's okay too. But typically social studies classes just use a single textbook and don't engage with other sources and just teach it sequentially and kind of just tell the story. But we want more from students than just to hear the teacher's ideas of the text. So there are 10 strategies, and in the Google link that Katie made for all of you, there's a handout that has these 10 strategies. And we're not going to go into great depth with many of these at all because it's just an hour we have. But we are going to talk about number 1 and number 2 a little bit, and how to get kids to really engage with that text. It's also important to model how some texts are tough, and for the teacher, for number 4, for the teacher really to say, this text is tough for me, let me show you why, and to model what makes it tough for them. Many students think if they read something and don't really understand it, there's really something wrong with them, and they just can't do it. They don't understand that it's a process and not everything should come easy. We need to teach kids to pay attention to important parts of the text, number 5 says, and many times that's going to be using some of the graphic organizers that we're going to talk about today. Giving them purposes for reading and helping them look for answers to those purposes as they go through. Helping model how to work carefully through a text. As teachers, sometimes we need to say, okay, these are the key ideas and details we want to learn through this. We can't expect them to memorize every little thing about it. So determining what's most important. Teach students to collaborate with their peers. Sounds much easier than it is, I realize, but it's a great strategy. And for teachers to talk less and listen more. And I have problems with that one myself. When we're passionate about our topic, we just want to tell about it. It's like telling about a grandchild or your kids. But letting students figure out the text and answer their own questions will really build them as readers. So one strategy I really like is called a textbook activity guide. And what it does is, if you remember, the first strategy of getting kids to get through tough text is to break it into more manageable chunks. This was created just for that. And the original author, Janet Allen, who's a reading guru, came up with the name for these. And since then, I've discovered a number of different teachers and schools that use textbook activity guides. I'm just going to show you one, and you will get all of these in the Google Drive. Let me start off with, oh, go ahead.
I did share the link to the Google Drive in the chat window, and in the folder, you'll see a PDF copy of the presentation, so you can click the links, and then there's a subfolder that says graphic organizers. That's where some of these strategy examples will be in that graphic organizers folder for you all.
This one is called Chunk and Chew graphic organizer. The brain research is pretty clear about kids and adults can only take in so much information before they need to process it in order then to be ready, their brains to be ready for more information. Hence they process it. And if all we do is just keep giving them information after information, it becomes information overload, and they can only keep a certain amount of things in their head at a time unless we give them processing time. So Chunk and Chew was a title some people have given to this. But if you'll notice, this graphic organizer has some text interaction codes at the top. And all these codes are going to tell students when they get to a certain chunk, this is going to be what they're going to be doing to process that chunk. And then you'll notice the self-monitoring codes that are there, because we kind of want to know as teachers, was this information easy enough for you to understand? You don't get it, you're not sure. So for instance, let's say we have a textbook, and the step number 1 is for the students to read page 92. And for the strategy code is ask questions. So what questions come to mind when you look at the title and picture? Students are to write in that space or another space, or however the teacher sets it up, the questions that they have. Otherwise, they might not even look at the title and the picture. It's getting them ways to focus on the content. And then, okay, do you understand it? Don't understand it? Or not sure? The second thing they do, page 92, DP. So we check back up what DP means, and that is discuss with a partner. Of course, these things you have to talk about ahead of time. Do you pre-select partners? Do you, however you find it works best for your classroom. They're to find someone that is about where they are, read each other's questions, and circle any that are similar. Partners should initial here. So their partner puts an initial on there, and then they go to, now there's going to be some getting up and moving in the room. The students are just thankful because no one's designed to sit all day, and that's what we have kids doing most of the day. Look at the third idea. Ooh, we got 93 through 97. That's a lot of pages. Oh, but their strategy is to skim. Of course, you've pre-talked about these things with them and modeled how to do those. With your partner, ooh, great, you get to work with somebody. List all the headings and subheadings found in this section. All right, you can just see as I go through this that sometimes there's 2 codes, okay? It may tell them to get a different piece of paper to do something on. Oh, look, here, we've got a little Venn diagram. Retell what you learned on the Venn diagram in only 10 words. Oh, draw a cartoon showing and the teacher puts this in, using at least 3 panels, but they could do more with different parts of the text. Can you answer the question you asked on number 1? If so, and then here's a reflection, okay? This is the original book here at the bottom where the idea came from. Now, a teacher may have students work on this during class time for 2 or 3 days. And what the teacher gets a chance to do then, as kids are engaging with this text, is go around and support where needed. And also to make, if there's special education students that may need adjustments, they can go around and help them and make adjustments to the content. That gives them a chance to actually walk around and engage with kids. And it also then makes the kids do the work. Because let's say we assign all of those things for kids to do independently. Not to work with a partner, just to go home and do it. You could end up with a graphic organizer that's copied off of somebody else. Because that happens a lot. Is kids are not doing their own work, or they don't have time to due to sports, or they're taking care of younger brothers or sisters, or they have jobs, or they don't have a pencil at home, okay? So this enables them to actually really get deep with the text due to the nature of the questions that you're asking, which is going to be teacher directed. Another teacher, let's see, yes, wanted students to read this article and told them to write in the margins by each paragraph. So once again, this is a chunk, and then they write or draw their questions or the main ideas of each chunk. Then there's some specific questions, and these questions help them to do a more difficult task, such as explain the problem that the soda ban is trying to fix. And then making them really look in the text, okay? Eventually then, something a little bit different, gives them a QR code to see another resource. And then they actually have a political cartoon at the end, which students can actually analyze at this point only because of the questions that they have answered up until then on the article. So the teacher really equipped the students to be able to answer a very tough question about this editorial cartoon because of the setup of what came before it. So a lot of thought about how we design these things. This particular teacher explains the textbook activity guides up here. Here's codes. And then this is their textbook activity guide, Venn diagram, a little bit of writing. Ooh, creating a map. Okay, predict with a partner. Another graphic organizer. They may have spent the whole week having kids engage with the text and doing these activities, but because they're chunked with processing time, it really equips students for remembering the content that they have read. So those are just some easy to do strategies, and if your teachers or you Google textbook activity guides, you'll see quite a few resources out there. Okay, and it's also really easy once you see one to design them for whatever content you have. So once again, codes, things to self-monitor, and explicit directions, with really saving the most analytical, tough parts for near the end, with the beginning parts looking at the basic comprehension, the basic information of the text. All right, so we're done now looking at texts. We know they need to read a lot of sources, and we gave you resources for sources and a strategy for chunking those texts. Now let's look at the specific disciplinary practices that we kind of have to teach our kids, and we can teach it as they're reading, as we're reading together maybe, that's important in order to comprehend social science. So let's look first at contextualizing sources and examining reliability. So it's really important before they read something, who is the source? Where was it written? What was happening at the time, and what was the purpose? Because if you don't know that, you're not going to really fully comprehend the direction of this source that you're reading. Soapstone is kind of an older strategy that you may have heard about before, and you'll see a graphic organizer for this in the Google link as well. And it's an acronym. There's so many acronyms. For analyzing really primary sources, but you can also use it with other sources as well, not just primary. And so the first 5, SOAPS, can many times be answered before they actually read. And then all of that is going to help get their brain full of Velcro, so what they read can then stick to it, and they will be able to answer this last one, tone. What is the mood? Is it sarcastic? Is it defeated? And what was the purpose in all that? Katie and I will have up on our website one thing that's at the printers now and not quite ready to show you are desktop activity cards. They're about the size of a big index card. And they can be put on a ring for teachers to have quick ideas on things like this to use. So soapstone is one of them. So she'll announce in an email when those are up on the website and ready.
And I can put that as soon as they're ready, we'll post them on the website, and we can put them in this Google Drive just in case you've bookmarked that or something as resources to use too.
Right. And when we look at the real reliability of sources, I like what this teacher says. Can you hear it okay? No?
No, I can't hear it, Kathy.
All right. Well, since we can't hear it, we're not going to listen to it. But a teaching channel, he spends a lot of time just talking. It's only a minute and 50 seconds, basically, to his students about each source so carefully that after a while, the kids are going, well, wait a minute. I don't know that I think this source is reliable, as these two boys say in the video, because he's actually telling where he's been wrong before. And the boys say, since he is owning up to his past mistakes, this author seems a little bit more reliable. And it's just, the teacher's just talking about the importance of that for students. And I also think, too, they need to consider the author and his or her influence when looking at sources, too, because on the left is a source on the Revolutionary War from Great Britain, their point of view. On the right is United States point of view of the Revolutionary War embedded in those. Do you think they're going to sound any different? Absolutely. So, see if you can get on Amazon maybe and finding a textbook from a different country and let them see how they view this event in history. Another method is called TARP. And you're looking at T for timeliness. Is this a current topic? Is it the most recent information? Does the information come from an author and organization who has the authority to speak on it, or is this somebody ranting? Who are the intended readers, and what is this publication's purpose? Does it relate to the topic, and is the source bias? And has them look at those things, and the acronym is TARP. A fun thing to do also is there's quite a few hoax sites out there. That the first one, called All About Explorers, is created by a group of teachers to teach kids about the internet. You can't believe everything you read. So the All About Explorers talks about a variety of explorers, and there's a lot of facts in there, but they throw some lies, inaccurate facts in there from time to time to see if kids catch them. Like all of a sudden Christopher Columbus booted something up on his computer, or but there's a lot of facts and a few not truths in them. And then these other links here are to other fake sites created to see if students can recognize when something is true or not. So my favorite is the Pacific Northwest Tree Octopus site. And on that site, let me show you where you can get a number of links. Nope, I'm not going to. Yes, here we go. This is, they're endangered, the Pacific Northwest Tree Octopus, from extinction. So there's this big push to save them. Now, if you look all through the site, when students look through it about the sightings of the tree octopus, all of this is made up. But kids will buy it hook, line, and sinker, especially when we look at the, let's see, media. Here we go. This is all the different literature that includes the tree octopus. Not true. It's made up literature. This is made up books, made up artwork, made up nonfiction. All of this is made up. All the visual, I mean, fake, 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 fake. The movies that you find on here are all fake. You can even print off Halloween trick or treat because they love candy corn and shrimp. At a certain point, we're hoping kids go, wait a minute, this can't be true. This can't be real. And hopefully some of these hoax sites might be a fun way of getting kids to realize that not everything they see on the internet is true. We could stand a few adults to go through this too. Another strategy, aparts, A for author, P, place or time, making sure kids, when we look at sources, can fill this all in and then think to themselves, okay, I don't know if whether what I'm reading here is really true or just someone's strong opinion. The second disciplinary practice that's really important to look at is identifying claims and supporting evidence. And claim, evidence, and reasoning is a great strategy. The claim is, what do you know? What is your position on a question? The evidence is, how do you know that? And the reasoning, do you have evidence to support your claim? And the CER can be used in not just social science, but can be used in science as well as ELA, because claim, evidence, and reasoning should be things we're thinking about as we're reading these topics. Here's a video some teachers use, unless you can't hear it, about claim, evidence, and reasoning. They use this for their students. Can you hear it? Okay.
I put that link in the chat window too, in case anybody wants to bookmark.
You can watch it on your own. Note to self, figure out how to make sound play on one of these calls. Okay. The next one is corroborating sources. Okay. Students need practice in this. They need to figure out, okay, does the information, what we think, does this source agree with it or disagree with it? Okay, across the texts. And so students need graphic organizers or ways of placing this information down so they can analyze it, such as a compare contrast document. Here's this text. Here's the 3 questions we're looking at. And did this text say yes or no or maybe? And here's the evidence. And then after they're looking at all of those across, then they can say their answer. You know what? I believe to question number 1, it's a yes. Every source agrees with this, okay, except for one, and they're not sure. And that gives them a chance to really look at things as a whole and then make some really important analytical decisions. The next thing we want kids to do in social science is analyze relationships among events. And really that's looking at many times a cause and effect structure. When you're in the middle of history, the causes and effects of an event and its importance can be hard to judge. So historians need to take a retrospective big picture look, studying the events, and some just follow after each other with no clear relationship, but some, and we can really see this in history. Without this in 1941, this in 1967 would have never happened. I just made that up. I have no clue what I'm talking about. But many times we look so much at isolated pieces of history, we don't get kids a chance to really look at things like this. And we can't learn from history if we're not learning how things are causing and affecting. One strategy for this is the herringbone or fishbone. It's called all sorts of different things. So they can make their own interpretations. It gives them a kind of a graphic organizer because these are supposed to look like the scales of the fish, and then analyze with evidence and make a hypothesis. History event chart. Okay, here's the text. Let me get the who, what, where, when, and why of each of these. And then I can determine the relationships between them. The next thing we really want to give kids help with doing so they will remember what they're examining is sometimes exploring events through different lenses. So that's maybe one group of kids looks at something through the economic lens. Another one looks at it through a political lens. Another one looks at it through a religious lens, an artistic lens. And it will be amazing what kids will learn if they can look at things through different lenses, and why sometimes the different lens will cause them to think something was biased or unbiased. Like an event in history, I think an example that we give you in the link, we have an example given to where if you look at this politically, you may think it's wrong, but if you look at it religiously, you have a whole different look at it. So exploring events through different lenses can be a powerful activity. G-Sprite, another acronym, is one way to get them to think deeply about different elements. And when you look at something, look at it through its geography, the social, the political, religious, intellectual, technological, and economic. This one you have, and is an example of some of the detailed questions you can ask, such as are there social classes? How they live? Are there inequalities? When you look at the political part, who's in charge? What is the power based on? And so on. The next one is understanding the structure and language. And I really think this is kind of complex, but yet it can open the door to real understanding of what they're reading. And that's looking that social scientists and historians, they write in one or more of a different structure. Some describe an event. Some give a problem and a solution. Some just give the sequence of events. Some cause and effect. And all these different structures can actually be an open door to comprehension, because a lot of historians will use certain words to signal that structure. And once students can learn what structure a historian is writing in, or a combination of structures, it's easier to comprehend. For example, all right, so this particular slide, sorry. This graphic organizer, it's 2 pages, will be in your link. And for each structure, they give a definition of the structure, the signal words that usually accompany that, a graphic organizer, and some summary questions, as well as a paragraph frame, to where if students kind of want to write a summary of something, they can use one of these frames to help structure it. Elementary teachers have some standards along structure. So your English teachers deal with the structure of stories, beginning, middle, and end. But authors of social science are going to use any number of these structures or combination of them. If a teacher can pre-look through it and say, this is compare, contrast, then they can give those kids a couple of those graphic organizers and say, you're getting ready to read a compare and contrast. Use these graphic organizers to help put your notes in to where you can then see the big picture of what's being compared. Then they can use one of those frames at the end to actually write about what they learned. I really think text structures there's a lot of graphic organizers out there for them. There's a lot of great resources for them. And it kind of gives kids power to where after a while they go, oh, they're writing sequentially. I can put my own graphic organizers together by numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Or I can tell that they're comparing and contrasting. I'm going to do a Venn diagram and be more independent with it. The last thing that's suggested is to teach kids how to write history. That sounds huge. But many times we need to start with some basic things. Historians create timelines and usually have narratives with it. They'll synthesize information or evidence from multiple sources. They'll do all of these things that we'll see on the slide. So having kids do versions of these as well is important. But we can also start off with some simple things, such as a strategy where we get kids to do something as fast as think, write, read, repeat. So in this graphic organizer, which you will have on the Google link, you give students a chunk of text or an image or a video clip from History Channel or another source. And so you tell them that you're going to have them write, and you give them, you either tell them what you want them to write as far as a purpose statement or a question you ask, or just the main idea of what they gathered from it. And then, as you can see these bullet points here, give them 1 minute of quiet thought, no writing. Think about what you're going to write. Kids will not take this time on their own, ever. But it's amazing what'll come to your head if you'll give yourself a chance. They'll start, if they have to write right away, our struggling kids will like, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. What am I supposed to write? And so 1 minute, quiet thought, no writing. Then give them 3 minutes. Of course, you can change these minute times. Write. Try not to stop writing the whole time. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be spelled correctly. If your punctuation's off, we don't care. Do a write till you tell them to stop. Then give them 1 minute to read through what they wrote and circle 3 words or phrases or 3 of the most important things. They can't write anymore. They can read, reread, and think, but they can't start writing again. Then you give them 2 more minutes to write, and whatever they circled or you had them do with that, they will, it's kind of once you try it, you'll see it's the actual determining the most important things will then give them something else to write, usually a deeper reflection of that. Then 30 seconds, read it, what you wrote, put a square around 1 word or phrase that you think is the most important one, then write again. And you and your students will be shocked at what can come out of that after reading a chunk or watching something. They also won't forget it because they had to do multiple things with it. And trying to spend our time trying to think of how to get kids how to get kids to remember things. It's getting to do it in different ways and different formats. Writing, making a graphic organizer, drawing, talking. All of those different things can help the brain place information into long-term memory. which is where we want it. A lot of great lessons that also help them read is and comprehend is on Stanford History Education Group. If you go directly to that link, those are all, you click on each one of these and you can get a fantastic lesson plan. You'll get graphic organizers, posters, charts, all sorts of things. So check out Stanford History Education Group. And I think that's it for our short time.
Thank you, Kathy. There's lots of strategies, I think, to sift through now to try to figure out what the best match is for different situations. So I know that I'm going to enjoy sorting through the Google Drive to look at some of those resources. I did put in the chat window, guys, I've put a bunch of links in there, but I just sent a thank you for joining us, and then there is a brief post survey if you get a chance, either today or maybe first thing tomorrow, whenever you have the chance. There's just a few questions in there. We'd love some feedback. If you have other topics you want to hear in the future, we'd also love to hear about those. I will send everybody an email too once the video recording is able to be uploaded so that you can check out the resources and stuff there as well. Does anybody have any questions for Kathy before we end today?
No, thank you very much.
You bet. And we're going to post this on the Illinois Social Science in Action when we get things back from the printer, like those cards and such. But Katie will notify you when that's going to be.
Yeah, I'll send a listserv email, a top 5 email on as soon as we can get that posted. So as soon as we have that information. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for coming today, and enjoy your break that's upcoming.
Bye, guys.